Welcome back, Exiles. So tis the season with 3.25 coming up. It's league start testing time. So a couple of nights ago, I went about trying to pull together a Splitting Steel Juggernaut just to see if I could get it to work for a league starter. And in fact, the build does work. It is on hardcore SSF though, and it's designed to be a super tanky and really slow build. And so I had to cut a few corners to sort of get it up to the level of damage that you'd expect for a trade league starter. So I got it into around T10 maps with relatively meh gear, and then I sort of geared it up a little bit, put a couple of replica dream feathers on it, and just to see how it would fare. And to be honest with you, it's both okay but not good at the same time, and I'll explain why. Now, for the campaign itself, did spectacularly. It hit a few points around Act 6 and Act 8 where it hit some bottlenecks, Act 4 as well, and then it sort of catches up in the preceding acts once you get a little bit better gearing and power, and generally it's pretty easy to do that. Just basically recraft your axe and then keep continuing forward. Now, in Act 1, you would need to mule a duelist, so you could get your hands on Splitting Steel from level 1, as well as Bleed Chance support, so that you get the build up and running, because it won't work with a Ruthless support gem on the Marauder. So that would be one of the very first challenges you would run into. It's quite an unorthodox sort of way to get a build started. Alternatively, you could just go the old Smite and Ruthless and Ancestral Call route from level 1 and just level up to about Act 3 or 4, and then switch, or Act 3, and switch to Splitting Steel in Act 3 once you get access to the library where Sosha is, and then progress it from there. But from about Act 3 to 4, you need to get to about gem level 9 to 11 for it to actually take off, so then you would need to level it up for a little while to achieve that. Overall, it was about 7 to 7.5 hours playtime to be able to gear it up from start to finish. So, and that's with no leveling gear. That's totally fresh run, no assistance, no nothing, on a 3 to 4 link and into mapping with about a 4 link. When I say about, it was a 4 link. And yeah, it's overall not too bad. I did die quite a bit with this build, though it didn't really run into any challenges in progressing through the campaign. So on a league start scenario, it could progress relatively okay with a reasonable amount of time under the hood. Now, as far as labbing was fine. I had absolutely no issues getting through and to including the 3rd lab, and had I progressed the build further and geared it up a bit better, I would be able to take it to Uber Lab and clear that no sweat. In fact, I'd probably be able to do that now with no problems whatsoever. So this is where the problems start to come in with this build based on my testing, and it's 2 problems, and it's not necessarily with the build, but I guess it's the way that I put league starters together and the way that I play. Number 1, I don't really like dying a lot, and so this build really wasn't doing it for me. It was basically hitting a plateau too early. I was getting absolutely crushed by random off screens and things like that. Though that being said, my defenses weren't balanced in any way, shape or form, and I was running scuffed gear, but it just didn't have that tanky feel that I like to have in my builds that I play from league start. I generally tend to play a little slower than the normal player, or I just play builds that feel strong and that they can take some hits, and I'm okay with it being a little slower at the league start. So that was one of the first issues I ran into. And in fact, this build is significantly better on the champion. Like, it was essentially designed for the champion. And so if you were going to play this from league start, the first point I make is you're better off playing it on the champion, hands down, and doing a Perseverance hybrid configuration. That makes a lot more sense. And in fact, a lot of players are playing it on the champion from league start. Secondly, if you were going to build this build for a character that could really tank up with it, then you would probably want to either go later into the game as your second build a Trickster and run Ephemeral Edge. And that's also another really common way to play it. Basically, you ES stack on the Trickster, and then you're able to use that ES stack to apply that to your Splitting Steel. And then basically you do tons of damage, super fast, super easy. It just outperforms the Juggernaut in every possible way in the end game as well. Though this build could get off the ground and really do well, and there are some Juggernaut builds that exist in the market currently, but they're just not up to the damage numbers that the Trickster is. Though there is one that I identified that has managed to do low life armor stacking successfully, but it's quite expensive nonetheless to be able to achieve that, and you could probably put that currency into a much better build at the end of the day. So the second issue I always run into as well is just around what I want to present to people as a league starter. So I went to T14 maps. I didn't, at level 67 I'll add, so I hadn't even reached level 68. I couldn't even get my 4th Ascendancy, so I couldn't get Unstoppable onto the build. And so part of this is I always push the build way harder than what I should for a league starter. Obviously, you're not going to get to T14s at level 67 on your first playthrough. That's just not realistic. You'd be closer to like 83 to 88, something like that. And you'd be very well progressed into your gearing. And that difference of like 20 skill points is absolutely huge. Like you could do a lot with that. You could tank up, you could get around it. So this is part of me as, I guess, a build guy in this sort of area, being highly critical of this build and probably over critiquing this build to the point where it probably is completely fine, but it didn't feel fine to me. And so that sort of turns me off wanting to go, hey guys, this is a great build, check this out. So that's why I'm not going to recommend this for a league start on the Juggernaut. But if you're going to play this on the Champion, absolutely would be a great build, hands down. In fact, I'll put a link to the POBs where you could go and have a look for this. Now, I did also try this on T16s, and I switched out my scuff gear and managed to get it working with my dual replica Dream Feathers, be it only with like 50 to 55,000 armor. And this was like crude. Like I did this in less than 10 hours. You wouldn't do this on a league start. You would be optimizing and you would be sort of gearing up. And at level 67 with twin replica Dream Feathers, it could sort of edge into T16 maps, but it's not a special build by any sort of measure. So that's another thing that sort of turned me off the build. What does this all mean? Well, there's probably absolutely nothing wrong with the build. Definitely for hardcore SSF, if you have a look in the tree in the description, perfectly fine. It's probably a build that I would play as a second build because it does get a little frustrating if you start dying a lot. And there are just better league starters out there on the Juggernaut. And in fact, that's where I'm going to lead to with this. Off of the back of playing this, I sort of got inspired to start playing with my Shield Crush build from a number of leagues ago. And you know what, bugger it, we're going to do a complete rework of Shield Crush to the current league. And so that's what the next league start test is going to be. And I'm pretty confident of that because that build as it stood was totally and absolutely viable. And then beyond that point, I have reworked the end game tree or the mid-end game tree to get it to a totally different level of tankability and dealt with a lot of the original issues that were in the build as well. So in the next live streams for league start testing, we're absolutely going to be giving that build a whack and doing a new guide before the hopefully before the patch notes come out, and then we'll adjust it for the patch notes at that point. Beyond that point, if you guys want to see other builds featured or other things that you want me to have a look at, see if we can get it working for league start, then pop down in the description below. And we've got like what, 2 weeks left, and that's plenty of time where I could run some build tests and whatnot and see what works and what doesn't work. It only takes like 2 to 3 nights to level up a character for me anyway, and I've done it 1,000 times now, so I am totally ready for it. So anyway, if you want to see me have a crack at and see if I can put together other more non-meta builds or something like that, or troubleshoot some builds that you really like that you may want to see on league start, and potentially I could do a guide for to give you that levity, then yeah, definitely put it in the description below. Anyway, if you like this video, don't forget to like and sub to the channel. Don't forget to follow the Twitch. I've been changing the formatting a little bit. Not all of my videos will be coming out with this formatting, but moving forwards, we're really going to be making it a little bit more professional and a little less profanity, and just cleaning up the act on the channel as an overall. But that being said, streams will always be the same as they always have been. But yeah, anyway, until next time, I'll see you guys later and have a good one.